This is a meeting of the Standing Committee on Education on today, the 6th of May. And I wish to welcome all members here and our guests from the SEA, from the Schools Evaluation Authority, as is customary here, where I will introduce myself and then get the members to introduce themselves, and then we'll hand over to you, Mr. Millar, to introduce yourself and your team. I'm Leon van Wyk, the chair of the Standing Committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and good afternoon to our learned friends. I'm Member Boyson, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Donita Stevens, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Phil Christians, a member of this committee.
Thank you. I'm just going to give members who are online, because this is classified as a hybrid meeting where we've got a number of people in person and a number of members online. So just for the online members to introduce themselves.
I'm Thomas Walters. I'm a member of the committee.
I'm not sure if Member Philander is online.
Chairperson, good afternoon. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, and I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Philander. Then over to you. Welcome to you, Mr. Millar, if you can introduce your team to us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Would you like me to introduce them, or will they introduce themselves?
They can introduce themselves.
Wonderful. My name is David Miller. I'm the Minister's Chief Evaluator at the Schools Evaluation Authority. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Zada van der Berg, Lead Evaluator. Good afternoon. I'm Ruth Robenheimer, a Lead Evaluator. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Fadia Hassim, Lead Evaluator.
Good afternoon. Yolanda Miller, Lead Evaluator.
Good afternoon. Andy Lesiengo, Lead Evaluator.
Good afternoon. Elaine van Zyl, Lead Evaluator.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. What we will do, we will then allow yourselves to make a presentation to us. I think it is important from a standing committee point of view that we get an understanding of the work that you do, and that also just helps us gain a better idea on the oversight role that we play in respect of education. So I'm going to hand over to you, Mr. Millar, and to designate whoever is going to speak on whichever aspects.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I'll be doing the presentation myself. I look forward to it, and thank you to the committee for engaging the team. Today we've made a bit of history by being in front of the Standing Committee, so it gives me great pleasure to present to you. We have an expression at the sea: when accountability knocks, will anyone answer? So for us to have a framework going to schools to see whether or not our schools are performing at the desired quality levels, we have seen a lot of schools that have opened the door of accountability very widely. So when Abelman and Elmore coined the phrase, when accountability knocks, will anyone answer, it became our mantra in many, many respects. Many of you will know, I just need to move the slide on. It's not there. Just press here. Wasima, if you can just.
Yes, in the meantime, I'll just indicate that the MEC has tendered his apology. His father passed away just a few days ago, so he's not available this week, but certainly we can proceed.
A little bit of technical issues. Just give it a second. It's going
That's fine. Thank you.
There's the baptism of fire.
Yes. Still, today. We have experience, sir.
Showing. What did you say? Let me just do this. Sorry, Chi. That's a new technology.
Yeah, it's no signal.
Yeah, I'll unplug it. Or else my entire screen is. Okay. Let's go back.
I think while we're waiting for the technicalities to get sorted out on this presentation to be able to page, I think if we could, you could just introduce yourself there, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My apologies for being late. My name is Alan May. I'm the Acting HOD for Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Wanted to unforce them.
Yes, please.
Going. So all you got to do is I'm going to put the cursor there and you move it.
Should I try that first?
Go.
Right, mic's still on. Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you for sorting that out, Wasima. Many of you will be familiar with Prof. Folming, John. I had the great pleasure of having one of his children at my school. And when Prof. Folming was the then CEO of Umalusi, he said that every child deserves access to a national system of quality education. And that schools are the fundamental building block of the education system, and change can only happen from within the school. Now, the WCED, to whom we are functionally linked but separate as an independent entity, has a vision for its schools. And that's quality education for every child in every classroom in every school in the province. So our role is to use our framework and to evaluate the quality that exists in our schools and to help identify schools that need support. So John's words many years ago ring true for probably every classroom across the world. So, Chair, just to give you a legislative context, who are we and why do we exist? This is taxpayers' money, so the taxpayer wants bang for their buck. So the Western Cape Provincial School Education Amendment Act was promulgated, Act number 4, in 2018. It was born of a vision of the then MEC for Education, Debbie Schaefer, and the then Premier Helen Ziller. So the Western Cape Provincial School Education Amendment Act 4 had several aspects to it: public-private partnerships, intervention facilities as examples. And the Schools Evaluation Authority was one aspect of this act. So the act established the C. It gave eligibility for appointment of the chief evaluator, lead evaluators, and evaluators, removal from office, the functions of the C, remuneration allowances, the functions of the head of department, the head of education in the Western Cape Education Department, and how he will support the C in the execution of its duties, dissolution, as well as the regulations. Now, the regulations are pretty unique. Of all the aspects of the Amendment Act 4, it's only the C's regulations that have been signed into law. Nothing else in the Act was signed into law. Our regulations are therefore cast in stone, and they do contain the signatures of the then Premier and the then MEC for Education. So the regulations were signed on the 11th of April 2019. Regulations are an offshoot of the Amendment Act 4 of 2018. So we're an established authority within the Western Cape government, a statutory body, and the chief evaluator reports directly to the MEC for Education in the province. I then appoint evaluators and evaluators to be able to undertake the school evaluations. The vision is to improve schools through strengthening school accountability. And the original idea way back in 2017 and 2018 was transforming schools accountability, TSA. And Mr. Mayor and I, when I was district director, we served on one of the committees that looked into post-evaluation support. So once an evaluation has been done, how do we support schools from a district perspective and even from a head office perspective? So that's the vision that we have. Every day it drives us. It's the reason we get out of bed. It has to be about the child. What this vision speaks to, many of our schools, whether there's a C, whether there's an education department, it doesn't matter to them. They're on autopilot. They're outstanding schools. Their accountability is downward. It's to the parent and to the child. Some schools see accountability as an upward kind of direction. We're accountable to not the C, even though we like to think, or some think they are, and to the district and to the education department. Outstanding schools, it doesn't matter whether or not the C exists or districts exist, they're accountable directly to the parent and to the child. That's the accountability default setting. So the heart of our evaluations, whenever we go into schools, and I'm very pleased to report that this year we intend doing 129 schools, we ask schools 3 key questions, and all of this is available on the website so that nothing is a surprise to schools when we knock on their doors. We ask schools, how are we doing? How do we know? And what are we going to do now? Now, some schools, and I will mention names of schools that I remember, Berkeley Primary School, didn't have a single recommendation. We didn't have to make a single recommendation. They were outstanding in every respect. In one school, we had to ask the hostel to raise the banister by 20 centimeters because it wasn't in line with the law. Now, you might think that's strange, but that's a safety aspect that affects children's lives. That was an outstanding school in every respect as well. So we have a framework that we operate according to. And if we make recommendations to schools, we expect an action plan so that when we go back, we want to see how they're progressing with the action plan. And we found, Chair, that outstanding schools focus these questions on learning. Learning is its core business. The biggest issue around the world is the leadership of learning. And the South African school, Miss Christians, is no different. No different. How leaders look at the quality of teaching and learning in the classroom. Teaching in our province, and I bet to say in the country, it's a lonely profession. Teachers get into the classroom and they close the door. And we found that very often there's not enough peer collaboration. But at outstanding schools, everybody gets into the classroom to see what they're up to because they want to learn and they want to grow. So the C does increase school accountability. It has become a distinctive hallmark of the policy governing education in the Western Cape. Minister Schaefer was serious about it. Minister Mayne is equally serious about pursuing how we hold our schools accountable. No one needs reminding what the Western Cape government values are. This is not education's values. This is across the departments in this province. And one of those core values is accountability. So the Schools Evaluation Authority speaks directly to that value. Chair, we all know that learner outcomes are the last output in a long journey of school improvement. If we make recommendations to schools, we're hoping that at the end of the day, more children have access to tertiary studies. The Western Cape government has a vision, and it's straight from the Premier's office, human capital development. That starts at the school level. That starts in the early years, even 0 to 4, but especially when that child gets to grade R. So any school that wants to improve, we're looking at the culture of teaching and learning, the quality of teaching and learning, which is directly related to how the leadership and management monitor that, so that at the end of the day, children do well. Because when parents send their children to school, at the end of every term, they have a report and they want to know, how did you do? So what is the purpose of a C evaluation for the benefit of the committee? We do help the school to improve its quality of teaching and learning. We help the school to improve learner outcomes, to address key areas related to leadership, management, governance, safety, behaviour, parental and community involvement. And then we're very proud of our very rigorous and reliable evaluation reports. Schools have an opportunity to reflect on our visit, and they send us a questionnaire, a response to a questionnaire, a Google questionnaire, on 2 occasions. Of the 125 school evaluations we've conducted in my 14 months as chief evaluator, I think we've had 1 negative response from a school, and that was in Metro East. They didn't like the report. They felt that they were better than what that we'd evaluated them. And of course, we allow that because this has to be a transparent process. But our reports are available on our website, and I believe that they are rigorous and reliable evaluation reports that give schools good insight into how to improve their practices. And then, of course, one of the major purposes is to inform parents in the wider and Western Cape public of the quality of Western Cape schools. We do put reports in the public domain. Once a report has been finalised, it gets sent to Minister, Head of Education. I then request my personal assistant to send the reports to the relevant directorate to place on our website. So it's fully transparent. And all the evaluators conduct evaluations under Section 11D4 of the Amendment Act. Chair, for the benefit of the committee, that's the team. The team has grown since December last year. We have added 2 additional evaluators. So at the moment, I have 6 evaluators and 6 lead evaluators and 11 evaluators. It's not big considering Ofsted in England has 5,000 school inspectors. 5,000. So when I arrived, I inherited 2 members of staff, Zaida van der Berg and Fadi Hassim, who were fonts of knowledge for me. They're now 2 of the lead evaluators. We are currently in what's called an interim stage of implementation of the C. My vision is to grow the C by at least to double the numbers, that we have at least 30 to 35 evaluators, which gives us an opportunity then, Mr. Boyson, to evaluate every school once every 5 years and possibly have more of a light touch with outstanding schools. So, Chair, when I got into office, I believe there were 2 mandates. The first mandate was to build a team. That has been a great success. No one on the team is not an education specialist. So rather put it the other way, everyone's an education specialist. If you count up the number of years experience we have, it probably comes to about 500 years. We've been immersed in classroom practice, in leadership practices, former district directors, former director of data management and systemics, principals, deputy principals, CES's special needs. And that's important because when you go into a special school, which is an innovation, we've done our first school of skills, we've done our first special mainstream school, we need to have people that speak the language of the school. That's what lends credibility to our reports. If our reports are going to be credible, something the public can rely upon, they've got to know that the people deployed into the schools to do the evaluations are worth their salt. So number 1 priority was getting the team built. Second priority was to draft the guidelines for schools. The policy's there, so I had to write the guidelines, and Zaida and Fadia assisted me to do that. We spent 2 months writing. It was a wonderful process. All our documents are on the website. So, Ms. Stevens, if any school wants to know what an evaluation involves, go to the website, check it out. When we knock on the door, don't be surprised. You don't have to be shocked. Everything is transparent. We don't hide anything from anybody. This is not an inspection, it's a school evaluation. We look forward to spending 2 days at our schools. When we leave there, I think we've made friends without currying favor with anybody, but we don't always put on a poker face. We are guests at schools. The WCD schools do not belong to the sea. They belong to the public. We are guests at their schools. So, Chair, I have 5 strategic priorities which were drafted for the next 4 years. Skilled, knowledgeable and respectful evaluators, evaluations that raise standards, using school evaluation standards and indicators to support continuous improvement, promote this authority as a credible body and a fit-for-purpose evaluation framework. That's the exciting part, the last part, because I go to Ofsted. I spend a day in the northwest of England, in Manchester, on the 2nd of July. And the Northwest Director, I'll be spending the day with him, and he's going to be telling me what changes His Majesty's Chief Inspector, Sir Martin Oliver, has brought about in their inspections in England. And for the members of the committee that weren't around when Minister Schaefer was here, possibly, Minister Schaefer went to England. There was a different His Majesty's Inspector at that time, was Her Majesty's Inspector. And they went and they came back with an almost identical model, but it wasn't a copy and paste model because context is very different. England, the Western Cape, we know we've got different quintiles here. So while we still have 5 focus areas, which I'll share with you now, Sir Martin Oliver has changed those 5 focus areas. And in England, a school gets 1 rating, that's it. Whereas we give a rating per key area plus an overall rating. England has now moved towards giving a rating for each key area. So I like to believe that they've copied a bit of our good work. So that's the strategic priority, and that is all gathered in a document for schools and for the committee, Strategy 2024 to 2028. We also wrote a general framework for schools. Many schools say, why did you choose us? And our first response is, well, why not you? So what I do is I choose the schools myself. I then submit a submission to Minister. We meet. Minister then sees that it meets his priorities and the Western Cape Education Department's priorities, and then he signs off the submission. And we limit ourselves to the schools that have been signed off in the submission. But any member of the public that complains to Minister, Minister can ask us to do an evaluation. We usually give 2 days notice. We've never not given 2 days notice, but we can just arrive at a school, but we've got to give them good reason why. And that's all in the regulations. And then we wrote the standards and substandards. This is for schools that want to be good or outstanding. What should you be looking at? And then, of course, examples of evidence. Chair, we're not a compliance body. This is not whole school evaluation. We don't ask for a list of policies. If we ask for a policy, we want to know how it's being implemented. When did you update it last? If it's relevant. But I can't be asked as chief evaluator, why didn't you look at the admissions policy? We're there for 2 days. We have a very short gap in the history of that school, and it's 2 days only that we get to see certain things. And we're more interested in the quality of teaching and learning and leadership and management. Not that the other key areas are not important, they are. So ladies and gents, the nitty-gritty granular detail. We like to believe in scaffolding. So the key areas that we look at learner achievement. And this is critical because equity is a feature of education. It has to be. If we're going to scaffold long-term success, leadership and management, I've put at the base, the foundation, even though leadership and management is key area 4, everything at a school rises and falls on leadership. If we appoint the right principal, the right deputy, departmental heads, you build very strong leadership muscle. And the number 1 rule of leadership, as all leaders know, it's always your fault. Accountability does matter. So we look at learner achievement key area 1, teaching and learning key area 2, 3, behavior and safety, 4, leadership and management, and 5, governance, parents and community. And we have a whole range of substandard standards and line items that we look at to be able to make a finding and then to possibly recommend solutions if they're struggling. So just 2 examples for your committee, Chair. Under key area 2, teaching and learning, we have 3 standards. So when the leads go into schools, they lead a team. I float around from school to school. They're the one that really do the hard yards. We look at how teachers foster a positive learning environment, the quality of classroom teaching practice, and how they support learners and learning. And a simple example would be, what questioning techniques does the teacher employ? And we found at schools that are not good and outstanding, teachers answer their own questions. Or it's one-word answers, or it's a yes or no. And they allow the children to shout the answers back. There's no deep thinking. And outstanding schools, there's deep thinking. This is an example of what we look for. Can we give teachers feedback after the lesson observations? Absolutely. Any teacher that we visit, and we visit all teachers, that's the beauty of this framework. We visit every single teacher. It's not a lottery system where we pick teachers. So teachers know that we're going to be in their classroom, spending time with them and being able to make findings on what they do. We don't single out individual teachers in our reports. We get a global view. We've got a whole lot of instruments that we use, very rigorous. Under leadership and management, we look at the direction that SNP gives to the school. We have found that the school self-evaluation sometimes is not done, and it's supposed to do it every year. School improvement plan at times is a malicious compliance exercise so that it can be ticked off. But at outstanding and good schools, there is huge buy-in, lots of stakeholder engagement. And you might be surprised when I give you the stats soon on how well-functioning most of our schools are in this province. You know, there's the urban legend that only 20% of schools work. It's absolute nonsense, and we can give you the evidence to support that, in this province at least. Standard 4.2, the SMT's actions to improve the quality of teaching and learning. This is leadership of learning. This is probably one of our biggest areas for development in the province. Our leaders are not instructional enough. And I include principals in that. There's a lot of good work being done at outstanding schools where teaching is not learning, where they've got visitors in and out of their classroom learning from one another's practice. But principals, departmental heads and subject heads must know what teachers are teaching and how they're teaching it. And then their actions to make sure that they use human, financial and physical resources effectively. So this really is just an example. The instruments on the website for everyone to look at with our line items, everything. Does the teacher circulate in class? Do the teachers mark the books? A lot of micro detail. And then very, very important, people always ask me, why such a focus on teachers and leaders? And I've always believed in the work of Hattie. And I was taught this by my head of curriculum at Metro North when I was director, Dr. Ludwig Punt. He said, Dave, Hattie, Prof. Hattie in Australia says, when you do classroom observation, don't just look at the teacher, look at the learner. What learning is happening? They're not mutually exclusive. They do complement one another. But if you look at Hattie's research and you look at the effect size, the most significant effect on learning, the teacher comes out in the top 15 more than anything else. If you're not giving feedback as a teacher, children will be disengaged from the learning experience. Look at something like questioning. Questioning is mentioned as having a fundamental effect on learning. That's why we look at questioning techniques. So the instrument that we've devised and developed in the last few years, since 2018, 2019, has a very strong teacher focus. Quality of teaching and learning will improve, or improved quality of teaching and learning will improve results in schools. And then, Chair, we give schools a rating for each key area, and then we add them all up and we give them a final rating. We had a school last week, a very good school, Mr. Mayor, South Peninsula High School, just short of being an outstanding school, had 3 4s and 2 3s. So the principal, we had a good laugh about that, Yolanda. She said, but hold on, 3 4s and 2 3s make a 4. We said, no, it doesn't work that way. You got a 3 for teaching and learning, and you got a 3 for leadership and management. You can only have 1 3. So we want schools to have a minimum of 4 4s. And then we had a school that had a 3 for results, key area 1, and a 3 for quality of teaching and learning. It stays a good school. It cannot be an outstanding school. If your quality of teaching and learning does not reflect in your results, you cannot be an outstanding school. You're working towards it. And that's the beauty. And all of our schools have accepted that. They've taken that on the chin where it has been applicable. I have mentioned this, that we have the key areas, the standards and the performance indicators. So when we're going to schools, we're looking for 75 pieces of evidence. Show us in our daily interactions with you. And then something that Minister has focused more and more on, Chair, is the escalations. Now, sometimes at schools, we see things that worry us. My role as Chief Evaluator is to escalate them to Minister. So the lead evaluators have got exactly 48 hours to submit to me what their concerns are. And I'll give you an example of a concern at a school in the Cape Winelands. We noticed in their results, you have a 50% dropout rate of girls in the school between grade 10 and grade 12. We noticed at breaks that girls are queuing for the toilets. The school is built for 1,000, there's 1,750 in the school. It's overcrowded. We know the issues around infrastructure. We don't need to belabor that point. The question arises, why is there a 50% dropout rate of girls? Is it poor menstrual hygiene management? My job is not to say to my team, there's no money for toilets. The department hasn't got money. My job, that's Minister's job. That's the head of education's job. My job is to escalate issues. We found last week that 2 tires on a 60-seater bus were bald. 60 children get onto that bus. My job is to escalate it. And as I said to Minister and SG, you cannot unknow what you know. We found fog lights on the West Coast on a bus weren't working. We know the West Coast, Britannia Bay, St. Helena Bay. Those kids come from a school called Steenberg's Cove. And I've driven past that school for many years, and we did an evaluation last year. We were absolutely gobsmacked by the quality of teaching and learning happening at that little school serving a poor community. And do you know what it was? Quality of teaching and learning, and it was the quality of the leadership. Those kids get fed at school. Unbelievable. You get gooseflesh thinking that indigent children will, with that kind of education, have access to a good high school and access to the economy. That is what human capital development does. So that's what escalations do. So this is just a process map of what must happen with an escalation. So an escalation must go from me to Minister and Head of Education. They then filter it down to the districts, and then they make sure that the issue gets resolved, especially if it's a life and death situation. Some will take longer. The inadequate toilets at a high school, that's not going to be solved overnight. But it might, if we build more toilets at the school, it might reduce the number of girls that drop out because they're too embarrassed to go to school in case they have an accident. Poor menstrual hygiene management. The escalations get reported on monthly, Minister, myself, and Head of Education, and they get reported on weekly in the one-on-ones between Minister and Head of Education. Minister does want to systemize these. He wants to put them on an electronic database so we can remove them once they've been resolved. There's not many escalations. Some schools have none whatsoever, but we have had a few. A huge one that I had to escalate this week was a principal that did not know on day 2 of the evaluation which of his teachers were absent the previous day. So how did he log on the first day on PMPS his staff attendance? Or did they just mark everyone present? Children wander around the school, there's internal truancy. That is an escalation. That is misconduct. You have to know how many of your teachers are at school on a particular day, because those children go to classes, Chair, and there's not a teacher to teach them. And then you look at their results, and even though the results have improved, they're still not good results. You don't manage people, you lead people, and that principal, who we've now escalated to the relevant authority, that's got to be investigated, because you're robbing children of a life opportunity to access an economy. That's important. So they're just some examples of escalations. Escalation is a serious business. Then there's an accountability chain. This has been in existence since the C started. It really is just the line through which different levels of improvement plans go. The Minister and the Head of Education and the acting Head of Education who's here today is the DDG districts. The rubber hits the road in Mr. Mayor's office. And I know with the Chief Director districts, Heather van Ster as well, who's got full-time staff who look at the escalations and who look at the recommendations for improvement. And then I mentioned earlier that Mr. Mayor and I were on the committee that looked at post-evaluation support. We don't do school improvement as a schools evaluation authority. We submit the report. These are our findings. These are our recommendations. We step back. It's an inside-out approach, the school, and an outside-in approach, the district. They must then work together on an action plan. And I must commend Grassy Park High School. When they got the report, we got an instant response from the district director, Sherry May Williams, from the circuit manager, Tandy Jafta, who's unfortunately just retired, and the school. They then started working on Saturdays to implement an action plan. So when you ask about our impact, that has to be impact. It's impactful to see schools working on a Saturday, taking the report seriously, and the circuit manager working hard with that school to try and turn things around. And I'll mention it again in a moment when we get to the rapid fire. So, Chair, this is a process map. If a school is rated outstanding, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, it's a light touch. What happens? When I was district director, I had a pilot school, and the pilot school was outstanding in every respect. Stellenberg High School in Metro North. The process map said district director must write a letter to the principal congratulating him, which I did. That's first stage in the process. We then have a light touch with the school because it's got very strong leadership muscle. Teaching and learning results year after year are exceptional, and it's remained like that. And then you'll see a process map that doesn't look so good. And that's if a school is rated inadequate. There's a whole range of more steps, Ms. Stevens, we need to take if a school is rated inadequate. These are the high-risk schools. These are the schools that need more support than anything else. And then moving along very quickly, our key activities. I'm very proud to announce that last year, with a smaller team, we conducted 93 evaluations, one evaluation every 2 days. Now, I'm the only one that engages with the final report, so they keep me very busy, my lead evaluators, and they keep their evaluators very busy. But I edit, I publish. It's a very important role, but they are the ones that do all the hard work. And then this year, Chair, 129 schools, one evaluation every 1.5 days. We do. And we have been welcomed with open arms. We got a response from a school today, very positive response. Fadia, one of your schools, Tagerhoff Primary, a full service school. And you just sit back and you think, yes, look, it is a very good school, not yet outstanding. But wow, Sheila Harris is the principal. When your principal has muscle, your school is very good or outstanding. That's important. And then we've done a lot of district road shows around the province, which have been very successful with principals. So all the advocacy around the C and what to expect. I've been personally to principals meetings. Professional development, I believe very strongly that my team must be developed professionally as well. So when schools are on holiday or at the end of the year, when schools are in exams or in the middle of the year, we do a lot of professional upskilling. I buy quite a few books, I make them read them, and then we do a lot of professional learning together around what's happening in education. And then something that I'm very proud of, which we started last year, Chair, is the annual certification event. Our framework says that schools must display their rating in their school foyer. Now, as a school principal, I'm not sure if I'd like to advertise that I was rated inadequate or requires improvement. So what I embarked upon last year was I reached out to Sanam and asked for full sponsorship. It was a cheeky request. Fortunately, they said, absolutely, let's do it. And we had our very first certification event. And we were all there. We saw the responses from some of those schools. And let me give you an example. There's 2 schools in Woodstock around the corner from each other. I won't name the schools. They serve an identical community. Identical. They're literally around the corner from one another. The one school is just short of outstanding, and the other school requires improvement. Difference? Leadership. Leadership. And the principal of the one school that requires improvement, was it requires improvement or inadequate? Ruth? Requires improvement. Thanks, it was one of your schools. The principal had never served on a governing body before. So she's gone from being a teacher to being a principal. How does she support a governing body when the South African Schools Act is very clear that principals must train governing bodies? You can't train governing bodies if you've had no experience of this. So the annual certification event was probably the highlight of our social calendar. We don't have a social calendar, but if there was one, that would be the highlight, and more about that in a second. So, Chair, these are your ratings that are for public consumption. In the 107 schools we've done in 14 months in my term of office as Chief Evaluator, 24 have been rated outstanding, 29 good, 41 requires improvement. And I do want to say that they are closer to good than they are to inadequate. And 12 were rated inadequate. Now, if you're inadequate, you're basically dysfunctional. And you need intensive care. You need life support. And it's our job to support those schools in becoming good schools. So that just gives you a breakdown of the good news. And I'm not spinning any story. My job is not to spin to a standing committee or to the public. This is what we have seen in our schools. 50% of our schools are good or outstanding. Many or most are very close to being good schools. There's a lot of good work being done by our teachers and by our principals. There is very good district support. And I especially want to single out the foundation phase. Foundation phase, if we had to rate foundation phase, it'd probably be very good to outstanding. And we know why, and that's in the annual report that I'll submit to Minister next week. So the C in numbers, very quickly, one evaluation every 1.47 days. We have observed 3,490 lessons in those schools. 82,000 minutes. We've been in classes, 1,421 hours, and 3,060 of the province's teachers have been observed in practice, in situ, in the classrooms. Now, some of you might be interested in this slide. This is the mode per key area. And I just want to get my report ready because I think sometimes a number hides more than it reveals. So key area 1, learner achievement, the most repeated score is a 1, which is inadequate. But this key area, 26 times was rated a 2, 19 times a 3, and 29 times was rated a 4. So that gives you the other side of the coin. Key area 2, teaching and learning, has been rated a 2, requires improvement. But again, 35 times it came up as a 3 and 19 times it came up as a 4. Key area 3, behaviour and safety. Look at the rating for behaviour and safety. We often think behaviour and safety is severely compromised. The mode for behaviour and safety is a 4. It's the most repeated score. 47 times. 47 schools, behaviour and safety is outstanding. There's a lot of hard work being done on discipline. It is exhausting. You look at Crestwell High School, a school on the up and up and up. Why? Leadership muscle. It's a school that works under tremendously difficult circumstances. It's tough to teach at school. By the time that bell rings at the end of a school day, those teachers are literally finished. They're exhausted because they're trying to teach and maintain discipline. And we know that children can't learn if they don't feel safe, and teachers can't teach if they don't feel safe. And you know, the Chief Director spoke about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And context matters. Context matters. Maslow's hierarchy is important. We've got to get the kids to the point where they're synthesizing information at a very high level, but their needs must also be met. So we do take context into account, and I'd be interested to hear from Minister and SG, even Mr. Mayor, when they see the Crestway report, how they view the context that we have now fleshed into the body of the report. And it was very good because engaging with the principal gave us lots of insight. Key area 4, the most repeated score was a 2, leadership and management. However, 46 times it came up as a 3 or a 4. And then key area 5, governance, parents and community. Our governance structures are generally outstanding. They're quite strong. There's lots of support. Yes, we have people that want to become governors for dubious reasons, but generally there's really strong support for schools. Then, Chair, just to remind everyone that we do align what we do with current practice. I was at the release of the World Bank report, which spoke about strengthening teacher effectiveness in the classroom. That's why we focus so much on the quality of teaching and learning. We have to strengthen teacher effectiveness in the classroom. We speak about curriculum, assessment and instruction as the 3 knowledge systems of education. We've got to get that right. If we get that right, your results will improve. And then just some concerning trends, which I have mentioned already. Instructor leadership, leadership of learning, CBD support system for school leaders especially. We have the Principals Institute or the Leadership Institute at CTLI, but we've got to start offering more short courses and not just to a cohort of people that will graduate with some kind of certificate or diploma. And for the future, I believe that the C and CTLI must engage more on what kind of courses could be offered to improve our schools going forward. Direct instruction, peer observation, school-based assessment. School-based assessment has been mentioned at a national level and at provincial level. So what happens is sometimes the internal standard at high school is too low. Children go into a matric exam with an inflated mark. They don't get that mark at the end of the year. They fail matric or they don't get a bachelor's. So we've got to strengthen school-based assessment at school. And then time management and notional time is a concern at schools rated inadequate and requires improvement. I'm not quite sure how schools can get through a syllabus with the kind of routine drift that happens at some schools. I don't think it's happening, and that's what's concerning. And then finishing off, the impact on schools in the future. There is a biannual report from the SG, which gets published, and that's given to Minister and I. I know Minister sent the biannual report back. He just wants a few changes. I've mentioned the escalations, the visit to Ofsted, then the instrument. The instrument, I believe, has ended up in the Eastern Cape. Now, don't quote me on that. But I was asked by Jonathan Malver if he could have the instrument. I said, well, it's on the website. It's public knowledge. So I'm not sure if something's happening in the Eastern Cape with the instrument, that they want to use it to improve the quality of teaching and learning in their own schools. If they are, absolutely fantastic. Because if the child benefits, that's why we're in this business. And then increase the number of evaluators. Money is tight. You know money's tight. So at the moment with 18 of us, possibly going to 20 next year, I'm not sure if I'm going to meet the vision of having 30 in the next few years. And then advocacy, bringing the C above the line. I don't think the public know enough about the C. There's been no public hearings at all into the work that we do. And that's why when I got this invitation, I was jumping up and down in my office and I said, fantastic. It's really nice to get invited. And I've mentioned the certification event. I said I'd come back to that. That's the photo of everyone that was certified. And if you think it was only the fee-paying schools that got certified good and outstanding, you'd be very wrong. You've got some no-fee schools as well. And you've got the school that had the highest school fees of the schools we evaluated last year was rated good. A no-fee school, Spine Road High in Mitchell's Plain, was rated outstanding in all key aspects, all key areas. Oh, it's not a no-fee school. I think it pays 2,000 rand a year, I think, or lower. But boy, there's a lot of schools punching above their weight. And it's really nice to see, Mr. Christians, when you go into those schools. And then something that Minister and I have worked on is called a RAFI. A RAFI is a rapid fire evaluation. Grassy Park High, we did last year. We weren't happy with what we saw. We said, we're giving you 6 months. But coming back, we want to see what you've done. We went back. And we've generated RAFI reports now. And they're one-day visits just to follow up. It adds a layer of accountability into the system. And I believe that the school has benefited tremendously from the original C support and the C report. The district Metro South has worked so hard with the school. We're starting to see things shift in a positive direction. And we generate those reports and we put them on the website as well. So RAFI, if you hear that term, Ms. Stevens, that is a rapid fire evaluation. We come in and we do it very quickly to see our priority recommendations. What is your progress? And we want evidence. You can't just say, yes, we've progressed. We want to see the progress. It is accountability. It's another layer, and it's a one-day visit. And then we share those RAFI reports with Minister and SG. And then, ladies and gents, my second last slide. This is what Dylan William, the Institute of Education, University of London said, and it's critical to the work we do in education in this province. If we create a culture where every teacher believes they need to improve, not because they are good enough, but because they can be even better, there is no limit to what we can achieve. You know, we went to COSAT in Kailicha. Young men teaching, qualified young men, outstanding role models. You have a principal that is teaching IT, mathematics, and physical sciences, Mr. Motong, and his motto is no excuses. Those teachers believe they can be better. They push the envelope of excellence every single day. Those teachers are in their classes, they're on time, those children are engaged. There is full professional engagement at our school. That's what we need. We need those catalysts for growth, and it speaks in their results and it speaks in their leadership. Then, of course, our very own head of education, Mr. Walters. Let's work together to achieving quality, serving all the learners of this province. Those were the wise words of this head of education 2 years ago. And ladies and gents, I believe there can be no fixes. There can be no corrections until there's accountability. And the C and the work that the C does is a very positive move in that direction. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. I'm sort of blown away by what you've told us here today. I think it's absolutely outstanding to hear the work that is being undertaken. And I think I would like to hear from committee on any comments or any questions that you may have. And hopefully we can ask some difficult questions as well, because Mr. Miller's got his whole team here. So we've got to ask each one of them at least a tough question. And I'd like Mr. Mayor, if you would like to have a comment at this stage or possibly later on.
Yeah, possibly later, thanks.
Thank you. So I'll see who would like to take the first question. Are we able to see on the platform if there are hands there as well? I see. We'll start with member Winvogel, who joined us. She's late. She's an alternate member, and then we'll work up the line.
Baie dankie, Chairperson. Chair, let me first welcome the report of the presentation of the department. I just want to understand, or is it possible for the department to explain to me what is the exact difference between school evaluation authority and what district and the circuit managers are doing? Then secondly, Chair, I think schools for me, what is important when we look at schools in black and colored areas, they face challenges related to large class sizes, which can impact the quality of education. Unfortunately, I could not find specific rating for schools in these areas because you present to us a slide of the different ratings. But I'm interested when it comes to schools in black and colored areas. I want to understand where do they fit into your ratings. Then, Chair, I think because wherever I went during the opening of schools, the cry was there from principals, teachers, we need more teachers when it comes to the colored and black schools of communities. Because they are sitting with 60 to 70 students in one class. And I think that's why I'm actually thinking that we need to prioritize the appointment of more educators over the school evaluation authority, given the challenges mentioned. I think I will park there, Chair. That's for now. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we'll add Member Christians and then Member Stevens, and then we can perhaps do a next round after that.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. It was mentioned a couple of times, and I'm also a believer of this, that it's all to do with leadership. If you have weak leaders as principals, you have a weak school. I firmly believe that, and I've mentioned this to the department many times, and the department said that they do have, where they place an emphasis on training the principals. Because I still believe there's a lot of improvement when it comes to our principals, and Mr. Meyer will then confirm the progress training principals, because when you have a strong principal, you have a strong school. We've seen that visiting schools. I've been privileged to go to Cressway in our previous term, and we actually had engagement with them with a 39% pass rate a few years ago. But I think the major intervention there was Professor Jonathan Jansen. It's his hometown. He went back and invested. So, there's more that we can do, I believe, and there's maybe people that can help. I was also fortunate to be part to in the previous parliament where we went to with this amendment of this act. And I think I was one of the people that opposed the act for various reasons. But as Member Windvogel said now, I don't know. Maybe I don't dispute the fact that you're professionals and all of that. The thinking was, can't we get this evaluation authority in the current structure of circuit managed districts? Can't you strengthen that? And I know your jobs is not the same, but can't you, to strengthen it, can't you have more emphasis on your districts and to look at these things? Because the word inspectors was used. In the old days, we had inspectors. Now we don't have inspectors. But that's why I see the roles as different. But I'm saying, can't you strengthen the districts and those type of things to do these things? Maybe just, and I don't know, maybe I'm just making a lot of comments, but maybe we still have a lot of, and we still have a lot of problems at a lot of schools. And I don't know, we discussed it at our last meeting, the behavior of learners at our schools. Do you make an impact? Because I've just engaged. I've been to a couple of schools, but this time I've not been there lately. But what I've done previously, I've written to the education department, say, listen, this is the schools I want to visit. Then they send the circuit manager and those people, so it helps, So we've done that. But I on my radars a couple of schools that's very problematic, not strong principals and behavioral issues, and that is maybe the thing that I'm very concerned about. You can have so many learners at the school, you can have this and that and the other, but behavior is a fundamental thing that we're getting wrong. Just to throw it out in Cressway High School, Crestway High School, when they were doing so badly, they had an acting principal. They had an acting principal and they were doing badly. And we challenged them. And you know what was one of the major concerns? I can't believe it. I said, how can this be a concern? How can this be a challenge? It's the word they said, challenge. After the presentation, they challenge. And the challenge was absent teachers. I said, but these people are getting paid to do the job. How can you have that? So it's small. I think if we just fix certain of the things, we'll make major strides. So maybe, I don't know, Chair, I'm going to park it there. Maybe I can ask afterwards. But I'm just throwing this out to say, we know what some of the problems are. And I know you make recommendations and it goes to the minister. And then you have guidelines. And hopefully, the guidelines has got more muscle as the recommendations. Thank you. I don't know if I'll ask questions, but that's it.
I think you, in effect, in your comments, Member Christians, you have asked questions, and I think those are the very interesting debate and a discussion on how we want to work to improvement, which I think is exactly what the SEA is trying to achieve. Member Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a lot of questions, but I do agree with Member Christians and Member Windvoort. But I would like to know how are schools selected for participation, in which grades and subjects are assessed. And then I was looking for a school's name on here, but I can't see so lekker. But we had a problem with the school yesterday. And I think you can't blame the teachers, but in a way I also do blame them, because you can't actually blame the children. Yesterday was the first day of school, where children were sent home from grade 3 to grade 9 because of the 3 of the teachers were not paid a salary for 3 months. So, and I think that was also bad for the children. And later that day, there was a letter out saying that due to the fact that the children are not paying school fees, or the school fees were not paid yet, the teachers are not going to teach their children. So the school from grade 3 to grade 9 was sent home. And later that day, because I did follow up later that day, the principal reissued another letter saying that the children can come back to school today. I also think that's not right, especially towards our kids. Thank you, Chair.
I think I'll hand over to you, Mr. Miller, and for your team.
Thank you.
Perhaps to comment on this.
Sorry, David. Yes. Sorry, Chair. May I go first and then deal with the departmental ones?
Yes.
So I think it impacts, and then David can come in around the SCA specific.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Member Stevens. The school is Veldrif Combined School. We have communicated with the school, with the principal, to retract that particular letter that was sent out. I think it was in frustration that the principal sent out the letter because, he's having to face teachers who have not earned a salary, and parents are just, sitting back. He did have the support of his governing body and a number of parents as well who were saying, we're paying. These other parents are capable of paying, but just refusing to pay. So it's a difficult one for a principal. You want to offer the kids the best possibility, the learners the best possibility, but if parents don't pay, it makes his or her task extremely difficult, particularly in communities that are very volatile. In terms of, I'll leave how schools are collected to David. To come to Mr. Member Christian's questions, yes, it is about leadership. Yes, we have an agreement with Professor Janssen at Crestway. So we approved him to be at the school. He's still at the school. He's in direct contact with myself as the go-between the department and the school and the project that we're running there. I'm meeting him shortly about 4 teacher posts that they're struggling with to try and get convergence done. But I've got confirmation from the HR in order to process that. The idea is that we welcome these opportunities of individuals who come into the school. Of course, we need to be assured of their credentials in how they're coming to assist the principal. I think if you read the comments of Professor Janssen at the end of last year or beginning of this year, with the release of the results was great praise for the principal for the role she played. But of course, we understand that there was a lot of coaching that happened along the way, a lot of mentoring. We also work very closely with the Principals Academy, where we have retired principals in a collective, and we then recommend to them principles that they should include on their program. So part of their program, they work with the principal for 3 years. So year 1, they get to suss out the principal to see their commitment, etc. In year 2, the principal gets invited to do a course at the Graduate School of Business of UCT at the waterfront campus. So it's similar to the MBA teams. We have a group of principals going there to go and do this course in school leadership. And so it's about systems thinking that they process. They give principals a lot of coaching and supporting, and it's the intention is that the principal is able to go back into their school, implement those principles, and in the process uplift the school. They're now at the stage of where they invite the deputy along as well. So you've got 2 people within the SMT at the school to drive that change. And where we see that, the relationship between the school and the Principals Academy, there's very positive results that come from it. Many of the top schools have been part of the process for 3 years, and then they're asked to stay on a bit longer. What we've done this year, we've identified 20 schools that were at risk, and we asked them to take these 20 schools additional to their normal program. So they've taken an additional 20 schools, which they visit on a regular basis to get a sense of support that the principal requires and provide support to the principal. So it's a relationship we've established with them. They are completely self-funded, and they manage this program, and they report to me on a quarterly basis of the kind of work they've done with principals. Besides that, we've initiated a leadership academy at our CTLI. And I'd really like to invite you at some point, the committee, to visit the CTLI and see the Leadership Academy in action. So we've developed courses, for example, for a head of department, as a person aspiring to be a head of department. A second course that says you are a head of department, now what do you do? The same for a deputy principal, aspiring to be, and then you now are. So it will take you through the skills, competencies, and experience you require to get into that position. It will tell you what it is, and you can then plot your career path as to how you're going to implement and develop those skills and competencies in getting to the point of where you're suitable for appointment as a deputy at the school. And then now you are a deputy. What is your role as the deputy principal at the school in support of the principal, the learning program at the school, the department, and how do you manage and grow people that's within your deputy principal area? For example, you'll have a deputy principal of the foundation phase, or you'll have a deputy principal of the intermediate phase at some schools. And so you have a specific pocket of staff that you need to support in an ongoing kind of way. And that's very important for us that that happens. And then there's, of course, the principal's course. Becoming a principal, you now are the principal. But we've added a third one, which says from good to great. How do you now take your school from a highly functional school to an exceptionally higher functioning school that the SEA will come in and find nothing wrong and unable to give you recommendations because you've really cracked the nut and the school is performing very well, learners are happy and learning every day in the class, teachers are well prepared to be in class, etc. And that is the third course at the principal level, for example. We are busy with the first cohort, then it's year 2 now of the program. And the idea is that we want to add as many people who are wanting to become HODs and principals to be part of these courses at the CTLI. Part of it is residential, where they have to go in. Part of it is where they will do online sessions, etc. But the idea is to build a pool of second and third tier leadership within the system. If we don't develop the second and third and fourth tier of leadership in the school, when the principal leaves, there's a massive vacuum, like at Crestway, and everything falls flat. And now it takes you 4 to 5 years to bring that school back up again. And so, you know, the appointment of a principal depends on a myriad of factors. We are not in control of that process. We advertise the post, we appoint the principal, that's what we do. But the process in between of the applications being received, the interviews, the shortlisting conducted, the interviews conducted, the nomination being made, that's controlled by a school governing body that alternates every 3 years. There's a new SGB. Sometimes within 2 years, you may have 4 or 5 members of the governing body not being able to serve because their kids have left matric or they've left grade 7. And so now you have to fill those positions, and that takes a while. And then in that process, the principal's post cannot be advertised because people will say, well, if this group has advertised the post, no, we didn't advertise the post. We do not agree with that advert. Go back. We want to re-advertise the post. So those are the kind of dynamics that you pick up, and this is what delays the appointment of a principal. In some cases, there's a deputy principal and a principal's post, like in Crestway's case, where the deputy post was also vacant and the principal's post is vacant. So the Mrs. Jacobs, I think Mrs. Jacobs, she went for the deputy principal's post and she went for the principal's post. Now, now we must still conduct the principal's post as well. Now, if she's nominated for the deputy principal's post and now she's shortlisted for the principal's post, it's just it's a little bit of a messy kind of situation. And so in some instances, governing bodies have even said to us, we're not going to deal with this process. Can the department have a panel that it constitutes, and maybe 3 or 4 of the governing body as part of it, and we process the appointment of a principal at the school. So in Crestway's case, there was a deputy principal, Mrs. Pochumpul now, who's now the deputy principal. She was appointed recently, and the principal was appointed a little bit before that. So those are the kind, you see now, they were vacant at the same time. But we first filled the principal's post, then the deputy post, and hence the delays in that process. If we look at you saying about the current, why didn't we not bring the SEA into the current structure? The idea behind the SEA is to give us an independent view of what's going on in the schools. You see, if I ask a circuit manager, sir, tell me about your 20 schools, the picture he's going to paint me, or she's going to paint me, is that things are rosy and everything's well, and there is absolutely no shadows of any, that they'd want to put out in the open, because it will make the circuit manager feel inadequate, or I'm not doing my job, and therefore I will be measured against that. So we wanted to have an independent view of what's going on in our schools. So the SEA sits outside of the WCED. I do not speak to David on a daily basis. We talk in a certain meetings there where we are commonly found. Heather van Ster, our Chief Director Districts, doesn't meet with David and have conversations about our schools. She went in and did some training for the SEA to tell them what we're doing in terms of our schools. And then we step back and we let them go in and evaluate our schools and give us that independent view. And that is the reason why they sit outside of our structure. The cost associated with it is that we did have a structure in the past called the Whole School Evaluation Unit within the Western Cape Education Department. There was a director post, deputy directors, chief education specialist, deputy chief education specialist. There were a number of posts associated with that. And we found that this may be, this is a better option for us to follow. And hence the minister made the decision and put that particular request through. So I agree with you. There are still a number of our schools with a lot of problems. Learner behavior is always a big concern, because even though we're offering the positive behavior program, even though we're offering the Hans Seidel program for grade 8 and 9 learners at some of our schools, we're doing the MOT program via our school in Tenderton in Wynberg, our behavior modification school there. We offer these courses to learners in grade 8 and 9 so that in about 3 to 4 years' time, we have the critical mass within a school that knows how to deal with conflict better. So we're training the grade 8 and 9 learners. So in 3 years' time, those grade 8s will be in grade 10 and the grade 9s will be grade 11. And we're training the next year's grade 8 and 9s and the next year's grade 8 and 9s. We have the critical mass in the school to say that behavior is unacceptable. This is the behavior we expect at our school. And so the Hans Seidel Foundation, the MOT program, is geared towards that and working us very closely with that. In terms of acting principals at schools, we're also not going to just appoint any person as a principal. Because remember, if we appoint a bad principal, a person that is unable, I want to say bad, if we appoint a principal who is unable to do and take up the role and responsibilities of a principal at a school, we see that very quickly in a school. The windows at the school are broken. The doors are hanging open. The security gates have been broken off. The water pipes are being stolen. The school is going into decay. The grass is growing this long on the field because the principal that we've appointed is unable to manage the various aspects of the school. It's like somebody who's unable to afford their house. The first thing you see, that the person is unable to afford the house is the grass at the front starts growing higher. The property becomes unkept because there's no spare cash to pay for all of those things. The same thing in a school environment. We see it very quickly. And that cost to us is much higher than us re-advertising the post. You see, so if we appointed the wrong person, we have a problem that stays with us for 20, 30 years. And to get rid of a person, that sounds very crude. To have a teacher, a principal charged, found guilty, dismissed, is a lengthy process. I mean, we've had a process with a principal. He was found guilty. He was sanctioned with dismissal. He was dismissed out of the system. He appealed to the minister. He was reinstated in the system. He was found guilty of other offenses. He was dismissed again. He appealed to the minister. The minister didn't uphold his appeal, and he's out of the system. No, it was upheld. And he came back into the system a third time. Then he hit a child, and he went into court, and he was found guilty in the court, and then he's been exited because he's got a criminal record. So those are the kind of challenges that we have about, exiting somebody from the system. Around the absent teachers, it is a principal's responsibility to mark learners present on our PMPS system, people management system. They're supposed to go in the morning by 9 o'clock and do that. In schools where you don't find that happening, it's the same schools where they don't have a school improvement plan. There is decay that you can see around the school. The learners are misbehaved. They're not interested. There is no sport. They're not being fed in a dignified kind of way. The children arrive when they want to. The parents talk badly about the school. The teachers are disrespectful towards the principal. And every other administrative responsibility is not done at the school. That's the reality at some of our schools, and we're working with them. And we drive our circuit managers. And just yesterday, I was listening to you talking about some of the stuff. It's exactly the things I was saying to circuit managers yesterday. There are fundamental issues we need to get right in our schools, and we cannot shirk away from that. About the principal being on time and prepared for his task, knowing what his teachers are teaching in the class, knowing what assessments are happening, knowing where the learners are in terms of their sort of curriculum for the year, where they are, how's the pacing of the curriculum happening. In schools where principals have their fingers on those pulses, you don't see broken windows, doors hanging, security gates off, everybody walking through a premises and a school fence being stolen. That's the kind of markers that we need to put on the table. In terms of Member Winvogel's question, I've explained the issue around the SEA, why we have it as an independent body. Our district officials, as much as I like to protect them, and there is a bias going to come in. People are people, and if I say to somebody now, tell me how bad is your school? Like yesterday, I asked the circuit managers, our schools are not functioning well. Which of the schools in your circuit are not functioning well? It's like a deathly silence. Why? Because if I must say, I've got 5 schools of my 25 that are dysfunctional, my colleagues are going to look at me and say, yo, you're not really quiet. You're not really doing a great job. And so therefore this is happening. And it may not be because of that. It may be because of a poorly principal that was appointed with a poor skill set in order to manage that school. And this is why I say to circuit managers, go and sit and do the process at the school. But don't be bullied into saying we must appoint somebody if that person is not going to be able to pull their weight as a principal at the school. You see, the hometown favorite will always come through in a lot of the appointments we do. So we get 4 or 5 applications for a post. We interview the 4 or 5. Number 1 is 85%. Number 2 is scored at 65%. Number 3 at 55%. Saying to the HOD, this shining light here is the one we must employ. But the shining light was the deputy principal at the same school where the systemic results are low, where the learner performance is low in general, where the absenteeism of learners is low, teacher attendance is low. Is this person now suddenly going to wake up and suddenly become a principal with fire and vigor and wanting to change the situation of the school? I doubt it. But we are presented with that by a governing body. And we then say to the governing, we do not agree with your appointment or your nomination. As the HOD, I have the right to make a decision contrary to what the governing body is telling me. But what we do is we write back to the governing body and we say, these are the reasons we think you need to reconsider your decision around the nomination. They write back to us. If you do not appoint the person we have recommended, we are going to close the school down. Now it's a catch-22. Who's going to stand longer at the table to negotiate a settlement here? And I think those are the kind of dynamics I wanted to point out that we have with governing bodies around the appointment of the right person for the job. You know, for me, it's irrelevant who the name of the person. The person's got the skills, the competencies, the experience to perform that function of a principal proficiently and effectively and efficiently. We must appoint the person. But if the person is appointed because she's a very friendly lady, she's been at the school for 25 years, it's her turn now to become the principal. And you know what? I'm saying it jokingly, but that is the words that people use when they're wanting to nominate somebody. Hy verdien dit. Hy's al lank al by die skool al. You see, and those are the kind of things, the practices that we find within our governing bodies that really bedevil the process. David will speak to you around the contextual factors in schools in colored and black areas. I agree with you. You know, more teachers is good. But I don't know of schools in our province right now that have between 60 and 70 learners. I'd like you to share with me, if you have that information available, to pass it on to me so that I can follow that up. And you're most welcome to write to me or to email me or WhatsApp me or even via Wasima. I would like that information so that I can take it up. The challenge we have, Member Van Vogel, is that a lot of our principals don't timetable effectively. So what do? They say, okay, in grade 10, Mr. Low, you know, he's the guru in mathematics. But Mr. Low sits with 5 learners in grade 12 for mathematics, 4 in grade 11 for mathematics, and he sits with 10 in grade 10 for mathematics. So in total, he's got less than 20 learners. He's got 19 learners that he's teaching grade 10, 11, and 12. But for grade 10, 11, and 12, he's got 7 periods, 7 periods, 7 periods. 21 periods to teach 19 children. Whereas Mrs. Washima on the other side, she's teaching 3 classes of 45, 45, and 45 because they're doing maths literacy. But we say it's fine for Mr. October to teach those 3 small classes. So it's about the balancing of the load at the school as well. In some of our schools, we've said, take away the subjects with the very low enrollment numbers. As a principal, as a store owner of Pick n Pay, you have to make a decision about which lines are moving and which lines are not moving. You can't be selling Christmas turkey at Pick n Pay right now because there's no demand for it. You're not going to push the line. That you will keep for December. But now, people have just finished Easter eggs. They're all thinking diet. They want light foods. You know, so you'll push that. I'm just using it as an example. Same in a school. You can't be pushing a subject in a school simply because you've got a resource that you believe is a guru and going to deliver the greater wisdom to the children. And then we still find of that 4 children in matric, 3 pass and 2 fail. Now, how is it you sit with 4 or 5 children in a class? That's individual attention. Every single one of those children should be passing, but they don't. And it's really about the quality of this guru, this perceived guru, that causes the problem at the bottom. So because we have light classes at the top, 5, 6 learners in the class, 10 is doing accounting, 3 is doing business studies, 5 is doing economics. At the bottom end, in grade 8 and 9, that's where you'll find the bulging in the sizes of the classes. Where schools have said, reduce our curriculum offering. We don't necessarily say take away maths and science. Maybe we look at how do we teach grade 11 and grade 12 together in a class, then in separate classes. That is another strategy, but principals don't want to look at that. They look at it as one class, and therefore the bulge is at the bottom where we have the bigger numbers, the 45s, the 50s in a class. And so it's about the timetabling issue that the principal needs to be schooled on, and the district is supposed to guide that principal to ensure that that is right. And I agree. I would love to have more money as a department for us to employ more teachers. I say that honestly. I'm an educationist, you know, but I'm also a public administrator that can only work with funds that are in budget and that we've got on hand. I can't work with money that I don't have. as an HOD. And so therefore, we have to cut our cloth to the budget that we've got. And hence we had to make those very hard decisions, in terms of our schools. But where you know of schools with numbers of 60 and 70, please, I'd like to know. Because according to what we have on the system, one of the biggest classes that I've seen was about 58. We intervened and it was sorted out. We made the class, we assisted the school to reprioritize their calendar and make the classes smaller. Because I agree with you, you cannot teach 55, 60 children in a class. That's crowd control. That's not teaching. That's basically telling them, sit down, sit down, sit down. You stand up, you sit down, sit down, sit down. And that's how it will go for the whole lesson. And so that's what we're trying to mitigate by intervening at schools. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. There, I think that was very useful. I think over to you, Mr. Miller, and your team.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the questions and the comment. Going back to when two of the members said that they didn't really approve of the C or the Act, going way back to 2003 with Collective Agreement 8, the Education Labour Relations Council, which legislated whole school evaluation. Now, the wolf cannot guard the hen house. We are not the department. We're completely independent of the department. So Mr. Mayor's words that say they get an independent evaluation, it's valuable, it's very valuable. So there is no cost for whole school evaluation in the department at the moment. That was a concurrent power that you'll remember Minister Schaefer pursued in the previous parliament or two before that. It might be prudent to remind the members that the entire Act is still at the appeal court. You're aware that SATU and Equal Education took the entire Act of 2018 and they lost the case. But the judge said you can appeal. Now it's at the appeal court. Now the C is part of that appeal. If that court case is successful, then obviously whole school evaluation must be re-established within the department. But Mr. Mayor is quite right. They're going to paint a rosy picture. If I say, Mr. Mayor, we saw this and we saw that, and schools have always said to us in lots of the comments, ladies and gents, and you'll vouch for me, it's good getting an independent view of what's happening at our schools. Circuit managers are run off their feet. They really are the foot soldiers of the profession. They work incredibly hard. So to answer Member Windvogel, your question around how a school's selected, on our website, we've got the guidelines for schools because it's a common question schools ask us, why us? On page 6 of the guidelines, it gives you how the schools are selected. So when I speak with Minister, remember about 70% of our schools are primary schools. So it would make sense that we would do 70% of our evaluations in primary schools. So that's not that we don't do that. I think at the moment we've got a 58% primary school bias. So my PA prints all the circuits from all the districts. So Overberg has got three circuits. Metro North has got 10 circuits. And then we choose from each circuit. So I make sure we've got a high school or a primary school. But we've also started to have a focus on our schools of skills, which offer the 4-year program. There's no reason why we shouldn't be evaluating the offering at a school of skills, because those children deserve access to economy as much as children do at a highly academically functioning school. We're doing Filia School as well, which is for the profoundly and severely intellectually disabled, because the department needs to know what is the offering to those severely and profoundly intellectually disabled children, because we've got the staff complement now to do it. We've got the specialists there. So any type of school. Minister does ask Member Windvogel that we do look at our agricultural schools. We've got 4 in the province, I think, Mr. Mayor. I think we've got 4 in the province agricultural schools. We did 1 last year. We're doing 1 this year, so that we know the quality of the offering at the agricultural schools, because that is one of the key economic priorities for the Western Cape province, being a rural farmland kind of province with big urban centres. Then we look at our maths and science schools. Is our maths and science strategy working? Ministers asked for a specific focus on technical high schools because there's been a view that we need to build more technical high schools or open more. Until we sort out the technical high schools we've got at the moment, why would you build more? Because we have found that many of our technical high schools that we've evaluated have lost their purpose. We're going to a technical high school tomorrow, and we've noticed they're offering tourism, maths literacy, hospitality studies, and I'm left puzzled. Surely the purpose of a technical high school is to offer the technical subjects. And then I'm left wondering, well, why they're offering the softer options. With no disrespect to those subjects, I'm a geography teacher. But why would a technical high school offer geography? Why? Is it to pump your matric results and to push them up? We've got to reestablish the purpose of technical schools. So there's no exact science. The cyclical model says that every school should be evaluated once every 5 years, which means it doesn't really matter who you choose. We're going to get you at some point. We're going to come and evaluate you at some point. I believe more in a sample, though. The Scottish have a sample of schools. They don't believe in the English model of every school every 5 years to keep them on their toes. I believe if we have a sample of schools, we can look at trends. We can give those trends to the department, and the department can start aligning their professional development offerings and their school support model based on the trends that we offer. So if you want to look at page 6 of the guidelines for schools, ma'am, it might give you a bit of an indication, but I do sit with Minister. We do look at that. We pull that apart. Minister says, move here, move there, and I move schools around. But once he signed off the submission, that's what we look at. It's got to meet the strategic priorities of education. The Minister has his strategic priorities, and the WCDs and his obviously align. We've looked at our first preschool, Berkeley House, which offers from age 3, 4, 5, and 6. We've broken new ground there as well. So that's important because early childhood development has been migrated from DSD to education. So we now need to say to the WCD, this is what we are seeing in your schools so that they can give them the necessary support, ma'am. A lot of these questions Mr. Mayor has answered. Member Christians, presenteeism can be a real danger in some of our schools. You can have a teacher there, and presenteeism is not meant to be complimentary. And I agree with you. It's not just about having a warm body in a class. It's about somebody that can inspire and can ignite learning. And some might think I operate on a parallel universe. I don't. I'm very realistic about what's happening in our schools. And Mr. Mayor's responded around that, the cost containment measures. But we have seen some of our schools where, despite the circumstances of the school, they're not just present, they don't just show up, they really do step up. And that's entirely to their credit. And again, context so does matter, absolutely. Big classes you can do less with. But I want to drive this point home as well. We have not yet encountered any schools in excess of 60 children. We've had a few schools in the 50s. And you have my word, we escalate them to ministry immediately to see if that is a problem that can be resolved. And in one case, we did find out, Chair, that the principal had his favourites on his management team, and he decided to give them less of a timetable load than others. And in some cases, they simply combine classes. They simply combine classes so that their friend has a free period. It is not common, Member Christians. It's not common at all. It's more the exception rather than the rule. And the more teachers have been responded to. The black and coloured areas, the large classes. We went to Manzomtombo last year in Mfuleni. Acting principal, bulging at the seams. We've been to those big schools. Functionality, yes, they rated a 2. We were humming and hawing, is it a 2 or a 3? That acting principal had the best life sciences results in Metro North last year. She had better results than some of those Afrikaans medium high schools and schools in the Milnerton area. There's a sense of Ubuntu. There's a sense of Ubuntu, Member Windvogel, at some of our black schools. If you knock on the door at a black school tomorrow, they will give you a place. And the classes get fuller and fuller and fuller. There's got to come a point where we say to our circuit managers and our principals, don't take any more children, because they're just impacting on the teacher and the ability of the teacher to do crowd control. When I arrived in Cape Town, I got a class of 75 for geography because there's a clash on the timetable, it wasn't fixed. I taught for 20 minutes a lesson. When I had that class, it did impact my results. It was quite stressful, even though it was at a supposedly top performing school. So we do recognize that, but that's something the department has addressed. There is professional disengagement at some of our schools. And I'm always left wondering, why do some of our, and I'll say this term with great respect, former House of Rep schools, because the data is still crunched according to that behind the scenes, why do they look like prisons? Because those teachers teach in areas where gang-related violence is the highest. You will know that this is the province with the highest number of shacks in the country. We have 17% of our children that go to school. 17% of our children come from an informal settlement. The next highest, I think, could be Gauteng with 12 or 13%. And we have the gang violence that does impact on attendance. And then, remember, Christian, the whole issue of what Mr. Mayor spoke about, we've asked Minister and SG to investigate the principal who doesn't indicate which teachers are at school or not. Why is it that we are the only province where principals have not been dismissed for incapacity? That the previous National Minister of Education had to ask the new minister in this province, Section 58B schools, underperforming schools. And we know how that works. We are dismissing principals for misconduct. And again, it's not the rule. It's not the rule. It is the exception. Our children's life chances are being deprived because of a lack of leadership, a lack of leading of people, a lack of leading of learning. We've got to get to a point, and that's why I said in my last slide, unless there's action, there's not going to be fixes. Unless there's accountability, there's not going to be fixes. But as Mr. Mayor rightfully said, everyone has a right to appeal, and sometimes those appeals are successful. And I'm not calling for the mass firing of principals. I've got too much respect for them. But we've got to get to a point where we say, this can no longer be sheltered employment. That's why I've got a very strong voice as Chief Evaluator of the C to say we will stand steady on our independence and we will hold schools accountable. And based on the statistics and the data that I've presented today, there is a lot of good work happening at our schools, even at our very, very tough to teach out schools. I think I've answered most of it. I know Mr. Mayor answered a lot of it as well. I still believe, Chair, that we need a middle college of middle leadership. I know the CTLI is there, and I know that Melvina September is running the Leadership Academy now. And I went to the graduation ceremony at the Novellis Institute a few years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to see the good work that graduate program is doing, Mr. Mayor. It's incredible work because they do focus on instructional leadership, which I think is a big need in our schools. But I still believe we've got to coordinate it more. We've got to coordinate it better. Principals Academy doing a great job. But there's a lot of external service providers out there doing lots of developmental work with schools. And I'm often left thinking when I see that a circuit manager's opened up a consultancy or a principal's opened up a consultancy, what were they doing when they were circuit managers? Why are they offering those school development courses now? And you're quite right. It should be happening at school level. But again, the foot soldiers in districts, and the district is an expensive model. I take my hat off to circuit managers for the role that they play, trying to make sure, because I know Mr. Mayor well, he was my former boss. He will hold these people accountable for what happens in the schools. But we've got to start holding principals more accountable as well. Those that simply don't form properly. I think I've answered everything. If I haven't, feel free to guide me, Chair. Thank you.
Right. I think, thank you very much for that. I know Member Walters has been holding his hand up for so long, and he must be quite tired in doing that. So I think we'll give him an opportunity, and then you, Member Boyson, and I don't know if anybody else online has hand up. No, that's fine. So go ahead, Member Walters.
Well, thank you, Chair. Also speaking last, some of my thunder has been stolen by some of the other questions. Member Christians being one of them again. But anyway, Chair, I happen to like very, very much a couple of things that I saw in the presentation. One, I like the idea of a completely independent evaluation board. In fact, I would actually, and I have been of this view for many years, I would actually like to see it in more departments, this type of approach. But I have two questions. Let me just conclude my comments. There's a couple of things that came out in the presentation. The one was answered by Mr. One comment was covered by Mr. Miller already, and both I picked it up both from his comment as well as from Mr. Walters. They're no relation. There seems to be a problem with management, with principles and accountability of principles, the way they get selected, the reasons they get selected, as well as how they get evaluated. And I think he's covered that already. There is a systemic change or systemic question there that I believe the committee should keep its eye on. And secondly, the comment that he made about a managerial school. I've come across this in other contexts and other government departments as well, but frankly, it boils down to this. I think the modern principal is more than a teacher or a supervisor of teachers. It's people who have to manage systems. They have to manage systems holistically. It's far more of a kind of a CEO role than it would have been presumably years ago. And I think that's also something I believe the committee should be keeping an eye on, how to mainstream, call it the upskilling and creation of a different class of school principal going forward. I think those are fundamentally systemic issues that the SEA are taking us towards. That's what I take out of the presentation. I would also, look, I'm sure there might be reasons why it's not a good idea, but I would have liked to have seen actually an annual comprehensive evaluation of all schools, because I think it can only help the committees. So, but yeah, maybe they want to comment on that. But two very specific, fairly mundane questions compared to the call it systemic nature and holistic nature of this discussion. And that comes from the committee that I'm the chair of. Is culture and sport, now, I certainly believe it's a key component of education, is that at all something that falls within the ambit of your evaluations? And should that perhaps be? I think it's more than a side activity. I think it's part of the educational experience. And then also, and I'm probably starting to sound like a broken record there, but you touch on it in your presentation, safety concerns for teachers and for pupils. Is it perhaps possible to comment more as to how that forms part of your evaluation as well? And what type of recommendations, for example, will emanate from that? And Chair, those are my questions and comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Member Walters. I'm handing over to Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm also 90% covered by the responses by Mr. Mayor and Mr. Miller, but then allow me to just make some comments. Chairperson, on the number of lessons observed and teachers observed, and if my memory serves me correctly, there are 6 lead evaluators and 11 evaluators. Is it that total of 17 that has done all these observations? Whoa, Chairperson. In that case, this is extraordinary, and one needs to commend that. That sounds like a lot of hours and hard work and family time being sacrificed, etc. So we need to acknowledge that, Chairperson, that we are aware now that there's a great deal of work happening behind the scenes. And Mr. Mayor, I always say this, regardless of the challenges in education, and this is our first engagement with SEA. We engage with the department most of the time, and regardless of the challenges, you always get that sense of passion. There are passionate educators out there and passionate management staff. You get the challenges in between, but the overall sense is the passion in it. And I've learned two new terms here, Chairperson. The one is mentioned by Mr. Miller of sheltered employment, and Mr. Mayor referred to gurus in the system. Now, Chairperson, with the sheltered employment and with the gurus in sports, especially professional sports, if the team wins, the players are good. If the team loses, they blame the coach. Now, it would be interesting in the guru environment and in the sheltered employment environment, where is the problem with underperforming schools? Where is the actual problem? And how would we tackle the actual problems to mitigate these kind of things? And then, Chairperson, I agree that technical schools should not be an oversupply into the conveyor belt when it comes to employment and whatever happens. It should produce merit-based students, or whatever we want to call them, who are ready to fill a position to grow the economy. As simple as that. It can't be a duplication. And then lastly, it would be interesting to find out, there was a mention made of about 50% female learner dropouts in one of the areas. It would be interesting to find out on whether that dropout, do they simply disappear in the education system, or do they drop out to go to a better facility school, or do they really drop out because once bitten, twice shy? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think, I want to endorse the whole concept of teachers being passionate, and I think, we can see that throughout the system. Just two issues that do come up with me now in the work that the SEA is doing and the role at the district and at the circuit level, where the circuit managers are possibly struggling to report the real problems that they have in their own areas, and what one does there to try and improve that process in terms of reporting and accountability as such. And then the other thought then is at the SGB level. Is it not time there perhaps that you have some SGB training that through that it's a form of a certificate that people need to get, even if it then becomes a 101, that then becomes a 201, or, that one starts to equip SGBs a little bit better, that they can make better decisions and understand that impact on their school and how they can improve that school. So I think handing that over to Mr. Miller. I don't know if we've got any more questions that we have. I see, Mr. Christians, your last question took about 30 minutes to answer.
I'm going to be quick, Chair. Thank you very much. Just two maybe questions is what I maybe wanted to know with Professor Jonathan Jansen is, why don't this happen at other schools? Because, like I said, in the 30 somewhat percent they had the previous year, they've turned it to about 60 somewhat. And maybe that is maybe one thing that the department have to look at, you know, old learners that can add value to schools. And the other thing in Mitchell's Plain, I always talk about Mondale. Mondale doing so exceptionally well. Okay, they're second to Spine Road, but Mondale doing so well. Mr. Mayor must tell us, you know, because they on that level of everybody wants to get into that school, and you can't. I know they get over 2,000 for 200 openings. Now there's Mrs. Hendricks, I think, that took over. You know, so if that model, because I think Mr. Bridgens ended at April and she started at May, so there wasn't a big gap. And obviously she must keep that same momentum going with Mondale. So I'm just thinking, what did you get right at Mondale? And can you have the same model at other schools where you have, you know, surely this, I don't know Ms. Hendricks at Ms. Hendricks at all, but maybe, you know, she came in, she must have a good CV, good passion and all of those type of things to take the school to a next level. So you know, some of the stuff we can duplicate that we're doing right at one school. And I still don't understand in Mitchell's Plain, it's big, okay, but in the one road, there's Marydale, there's quite a number of schools. And then you get Spine Road High School and Marydale just opposite doing exceptionally well. You go down the road and the other schools is not doing so well. I don't understand that. But I'm just saying the same with Professor Janssen, we can copy, and the same with what Marydale's done. We maybe can also, the department can copy that. We have that seamless transition to, you know, to the next principle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Christians. I think you were definitely trying to get a 9+ mark out of 10 here in terms of your questions, but we'll leave that to the educators to evaluate what score you will get there. I'm not sure if Mr. Mayor is going to answer.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that I don't have a red pen with me. I would have scored Member Christians, but well, Mr. Christians, you know, the movement at Mondale was seamless because the school was on a trajectory and on a pathway for a number of years. And the processes and the plans that they've put in place have been there for years at the school. And that deputy principal was part of that program in that school. There's a deputy principal who wasn't sitting in the background waiting for the principal to go. Very hands-on, fully in operation at the school. Where days when Mr. Bridgens was off, she was the acting principal. If there was any issues at the school, she dealt with the discipline, she dealt with parents, and so she engaged herself, you know, in the position. And that is when she took over, there was a structure in place, and I hope she's not going to maintain it, because I'd wanted to change it to her own flavor as well, because it can't be an Owen Bridgens flavor forever. Spine Road has changed. They've taken out some of what Mr. Najjar put in. They've now brought in other aspects at the school. Mr. Fairbairn has brought other matters into the areas into the school. But Mr. Najjar took the school to a certain level. He now needs to do it differently as the new principal at the school. And I think that's the same we'd want for Mondale as well. Again, it's about leadership. You know, if we appoint a good principal at the school, we sit. But if we're struggling with a principal with the appointment, and the person struggles to find their feet, it's a recipe for disaster. I just want to also add, you know, we do use curators as well, seasoned principals who have retired. We recently had one, Stephen Price from Bergfleet. We had him at Lotus High. He made a difference at the school and then decided to leave at a certain point, you know, and David can comment on that. But he was there and he put measures in place, and it's taken the school to another level. So even Lotus High was doing very poorly. And last year, they also upped their result, you know, at the same time. And I think that's where we use curator principals or principals with experience. Like even the principal of Veldrift is a very experienced principal. I mean, Mr. Vragom was principal of Diasville High School, a big high school in Saldanha, ran the school with distinction for many years, and then sends out a letter like yesterday, you know. But I mean, it's also, and he stabilized Veldrift, because we had huge challenges at Veldrift around, you know, inclusivity and equity at the school. It was a massive struggle for the community of Laiplek to get learners into the school. with Mr. Vragom there, he's opened the doors for learners from all the parts of the community to be at the school. And so that's been the positive that he's brought. But again, an experienced principal, one little slip up doesn't, make him to be a bad principal. It was just a matter where he became very frustrated with the parents not paying the fees. So we use curator principals. They are always seasoned principals. There's a process that we go through. They are interviewed, so that they come in to make a difference. Because we appoint them because they have no interest in the post. They don't want to be appointed again. They're actually on pension already. This is holiday money that they're coming to earn. But they're going to work hard for that. And I can tell you, at some of the schools where we've appointed them, they've turned it around. If you take Heathfield High, and you look at where Heathfield High was a few months ago, and now with Mr. Sherika and Mr. Robin Botha going in there, they stabilized the school. Then we had Fokia Smith who went in there. She stabilized the school, which we could relieve her of her responsibility, and she could go to Glendale now, and she's going to emulate what she's done at Heathfield High. She's going to do it at Glendale in Mitchell's Plain. And I'm saying to you, watch Glendale within another year or two and see where they're going to be. Like with Portland, like with Rocklands, there's a number of schools that are on the edge in Mitchell's Plain on the upward trajectory. And that is because of principals seeing what's happening at the schools neighboring, going to go and find out what's happening. I mean, Owen used to have workshops for principals around his school. All his primary school principals, he had in a meeting to say, your child wanting to come to our school, this is the hurdle they must jump over to get here. They must have this pass in mathematics at this standard. They must have this language mark. They must have this in order to be able to consider it for a place at Mondale. And so he had that meeting with his principals, and they had to gear themselves up because the parent wants the child at Mondale. But if you as a principal is not creating an environment for the child to succeed, to be considered at Mondale, they're going to put pressure on the principal. And that's how, he got the primary schools around his school to deliver a lot better. But I must say at Rocklands as well, we're seeing very positive. At Portland High, we're also seeing very positive kind of outcomes. We still have the AZ Burmans where we struggle. We've got Cedar that lost a phenomenal principal in Mr. Chotia, and a new principal coming in now filling big shoes, not necessarily at the same level as what Mr. Chotia was, and now having to start building Cedar up again. But I guarantee you, we will pick up the schools in Mitchell's Plain. We've got a very concerted effort around the underperforming schools, particularly. There's programs in place of supporting them. And we are getting to the point, as Mr. Miller has mentioned, we don't fire principals for underperformance. But I'm very close to it. I'm very close to it. You cannot do an injustice to children for 2-3 years in a row. Because the first response of teachers is, who's to blame? They say it is the children. Now, can it be 3 cohorts of different children with different backgrounds, with different educational experiences coming through your hands and now failing at grade 12? It cannot just be that the children have come and didn't necessarily have the right competencies and skills to be in the grade 12 and make a success of it. And then I do call out the principal. And we did that at a number of our schools last year. At Esland Park, we addressed the management team of that school in a very hard kind of way. We had a very open and frank conversation with that SMT, with all of the underperforming schools. And some of them came out of it a bit bruised and battered afterwards. And they came to say, Mr. Mayor, you was hard met my geweest. And I said, I have to be hard because you've got 180 grade 12 learners who are waiting for an opportunity to be successful. And you need to ensure that they are. And this is why we put a little bit more focus and a little bit more pressure on the principal in order to do so. So be assured, we are definitely on track to do that at all of our schools. You see, the real dropout, right, is very difficult for us to determine the exact reasons and what happens to those female learners. Yes, a lot of it is pregnancy, and a lot of them leave because of the pregnancy. We've got an arrangement with the Department of Health in various areas that if a girl has given birth, she must be encouraged by the nurse to go back to school. Because that's the last contact point now. She must go back to school. Our instruction to schools is also provide packs for that learner while she's at home waiting to have the baby, and even while she's at home with the baby. Here are the learning packs for her, or to catch up with the work and to stay in touch with the work so that she can come back to school when the child is she's able to have the child with an aunt or a mother or a caregiver while she then comes to write the final exams. At the school you visited last year at COSAT, there was a learner who was in matric who lost out quite a few months because of a pregnancy. She came back, she got 7 distinctions at COSAT, you see, and that is the kind of support that the school gives the learner, even though she's not there. And so this is what we try and do. You know, again, it's whether they come back is not something we can guarantee. It's a decision they need to make. You know, we encourage, we even have teacher liaisons at schools that work with the RCLs. They even extend their function to go and get that parent, to convince that parent to get the child back to school. But now the child had a child at school. Everybody knows in a small community, everybody knows there's a scanner. She doesn't want to come back. Maybe we offer them sometimes a place at another school, you know, but they're not prepared to, because now they're going to have to go and live in a new town. There's no support structure and the child is here and all of those kind of dynamics. But we do make an extra effort to try and get the child back at the school. As I said, we work very closely with the Department of Health in particular to ensure that the learner gets back to school. Technical schools, member Boyson, is a product now of people chasing results. So instead of offering construction and electrical and civil, we went for tourism because it was perceived to be an easier subject. And our learners will pass, and they'll pass matric. But where they're going to go with the matric certificate, with tourism, hospitality studies, you know, subjects that are not going to give them the same kind of possibility of getting into a university as what maths and physics and life science and history and geography would give them access to. And so schools chose easier subjects so that they can achieve and the school can look good, but the learners actually look very bad on paper, having a result, and they may have a distinction for hospitality studies, but it doesn't count at university. You know, if that child had a 4 for mathematics, that child will be considered, you know, for a place, rather than the child who's got a 7, you know, for hospitality studies will receive. And so a lot of our technical schools, we must also understand that over the years, it has been neglected. And so the workshops are in states of disrepair. And so instead of having kids in an unsafe workspace, we rather just stop the subject. And so there's a lot of work that we need to catch up on that. The 3-3 model is one of the mechanisms that National Department is putting forward as a way to, you know, recover from that. Because the job market is not asking for doctors and lawyers. It's asking for plumbers, electricians, artisans. It's what it's asking for. Boiler makers, fit and turners. Those are the guys that industry is looking for. We need more of that and potentially a little less doctors and lawyers, because there are so many doctors and lawyers who are currently sitting at home with degrees and things and are unable to find a position. I mean, we've got people coming to work by us as interns with a law degree, you know, with a full 4-year law degree, and the person's looking for an internship to come and work in my office, you know, for 6 months or for a year. So with the market really is around specific artisan skills, and our technical schools and our school of skills, you know, are geared towards providing that. The managerial school, I agree, Member Walters. We have the Leadership Academy at the CTLI. It's not, the name is perhaps a little bit deceptive in saying it's a leadership academy, but the role of a deputy principal, the role of a head of department at the school is purely managerial and supervisory. And so therefore, the courses that are structured are for supervision and support and for managerial kind of operations. The principal is a manager as well as a CEO, as a strategist, right? And I think that balance is important to note, and we do offer that. Then in terms of the circuit manager level, Chair, you mentioned that we should deal with this at a circuit kind of level, right? But as I indicated previously, the SEA is independent. You know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get somebody to reflect on their own work and say, I failed. You know, it's very difficult to get that. It's a level of maturity we'd like our circuit managers to get to. But let me tell you, to find a circuit manager nowadays is extremely difficult as well. So we've advertised posts recently for circuit manager. We advertised 6 posts. We're only going to appoint 4. We couldn't find the other 2. And we interviewed 14 people over 2 days. So it's also an indicator to us that getting the right skill in at circuit manager is because we've got a lot of newly appointed principals at schools at the moment. Those who are set and at the school for 10, 15 years, they don't want to leave the school. They're comfortable in their positions. They know their school. They know how to run it. Some of them get a 38A from the governing body, and they're thankful for that. They don't want to come and work by us. You're not going to get the principal of, let's say, Renish, coming to work by us as a circuit manager, because the benefits of being at Renish is a lot more. I mean, if you see the principal arriving at the principal's meeting with a car that's sponsored by Roller Motors, a new Volvo, nogal, and allowed to attend, certain international conferences and so on, then one can understand why we're not going to get some of our really top exceptional principals to come and work, within the department, unless they feel they've now earned what they wanted to over the years. They want to plow back and they come in. And we've got some good ones that have joined us recently as well, to come and make a difference at school. So it's a little bit of a 6 and a half a dozen, that we find ourselves in. But I think it's something that we are working on. We acknowledge the challenge and we will definitely try, and then improve on that. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Thanks very much. Member Walters, I think I heard your first question or comment correctly. I don't think we have a problem with the management of principals. I think our principals are doing a great job, but there are outliers who have become completely professionally disengaged. I've always believed you don't manage people. You manage policy, you manage paper, you manage programs, you lead people. And we've had several principals where the lead evaluator will phone me and say the principal's just left the school premises. Now, there's nothing I can do about that. I can't phone somebody and report the principal. But we do have those kinds of principals. We have a certain country town where we have a principal of the primary school in the township related to the principal of the high school. The female principal of the primary school is a good principal. Those children go to the high school, and it's shocking. They get such quality at the primary school, but there's no way out because they've got to go to that school. They don't have transport money to go to another school. That's the school they have to go to. So sometimes when we have a delay in the appointment of principals, Member Walters, there is division. It's contested territory. Things do fall apart a bit if muscle hasn't been built. And Mr. Mayor spoke about Mondale. That's where Owen Bridgens built that muscle. I like the term, Member Walters, of a modern principle. That's a new term for me today, a modern principle. What is a modern principle? And we've had this discussion in my previous job with the head of education at a bilateral, where I said to him that our principals are instructional leaders. Our principals are not administrators. And one of the biggest complaints we get from principals at the moment is that they're forced to spend most of the day in the office. Now, the standards for South African principalship, which this committee might know about, says that the principal is a leader of learning. The principal in this country is a leader of learning. You can't have an administrator leading learning. You've got to have a principal. Principal Lab in America has traded his office for a cabinet that he wheels around the school. Ann Morton at Pinelands North Primary School doesn't have an office. She retired at the end of last year. She gave up her office. She says, I don't need it. Why would I need an office? I'm a principal. I must be in my school, and we rated that school outstanding in every respect. They've even got Baloo the parrot, the therapy parrots that children go and talk to. She's just taken the school to a next level. One of the few principals I know doesn't sit in the office, and some of our principals do, but many get into the school. So that's an interesting notion, Member Walters, about, the modern principal. Our principals have got to do more school walks. They have to do more school walks with a purpose. Get out of the office, walk around the school, knock on doors, go into classrooms, manage by walking about. That's what the Principals Academy teaches our principals. And it's very, very effective. And then Member Walters, please speak to Minister Maney about giving me another 1,000 evaluators so that we can do an annual evaluation of all schools. I'd love to do that. We're probably at this rate going to get to every school once every 6 to 7 years with the number of evaluators we've got. Our budget's 20 million. It's not big, not at all. And most of it is cost of employment. So it would be good, but to have to cope with all those evaluations in a year, I think we've got enough at the moment to be able to pull out the trends. And then culture and sport, is it something? Absolutely. That is something that's impressed us to no end. And remember that we do collaborate with DCAS. DCAS have mod centers operating. They pay the coaches at those schools in the afternoon. So the mass opportunity and development centers work at some of our schools, especially in our more disadvantaged areas, to give children access to sport. But we have been very, very thrilled with the level of co-curricular, extracurricular, especially sport and culture. And even at the highly disadvantaged schools, you've always got children representing the province at something, rugby or athletics. Very big. So that is something that really pleases us. The safety concerns, Member Walters, we do have Key Area 3, which looks at behaviour and safety. If you want to go to the instrument on our website and look at Key Area 3, the instrument is very specific in terms of its line items, sir, that we look at. But we do refer to safe schools. We speak about one of the biggest problems is the inconsistent application of the Code of Conduct for Learners. When a principal at a high school says it's time to implement the Code of Conduct for Learners, well, where have you been for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that you've allowed it to get to this point? Toilets are often a concern for us. Hygiene, it is often a concern, the state of the toilets. And then the department expects everyone to have a signed job description. It's an annual feature. And they have signed job descriptions, but there's no accountability. So I don't have to clean the toilets. Nobody's going to check. So it becomes a vicious circle. But again, we've been to schools where you can eat off the floors in highly disadvantaged areas where there is no litter. And then Member Boyson, I'm not sure where those learners go. I don't think we're tracking where they're going. We hope that some do go back to school or go to some kind of FET college at some point, and it's not always for pregnancy. I asked Minister in my letter, is an alternative being proffered to the school? Because at that one particular school as well, the children are failing matric in their droves. And in my escalation to Minister, I said, in the last 4 years, 350 matrics have failed. By the end of 2025, 500 matrics will have failed at that school. And that's in a rural country town where there is drug and alcohol abuse, where there is gangsterism. Those boys, and the dropout rate there's about 65% between grade 10 and 12, they'll become NEETs. What is being done at a school like that? Now, the department doesn't have a magic wand. We know that because that's a community safety issue as well. So I'm not sure how we can track them. Sir, you're most welcome to visit us at our offices. They're small offices, but they're beautiful. Come and look at all the evidence of every single lesson we've observed, every teacher who's observed. I told my leads, if we get hauled to court around an evaluation that a school disagrees with, because for many schools, they use it as a marketing and a branding exercise. When is the final report available? We want to send a link to your website. And we've got one such case on my desk at the moment, which we will not say what the school is, a 27-page response. It's a former Model C school that is in serious decline. And the principal doesn't want to know anything about it. He said, but this is not us. We had another school where the principal stood up and said, I don't accept these ratings. We've got all the evidence gathered. Yes, sir. The numbers that we gave you are exact numbers. That's what's fed through to me. We have a pre-planning meeting. They had one this morning because they're going to the field tomorrow. They're going to Worcester tomorrow. They're going to Visantacral tomorrow. And they're going to Atlantis tomorrow. They do pre-planning with me. I approve the pre-planning. Every teacher must be visited. But if there's a spare teacher and we haven't got enough evaluators, say 5 evaluators, I'll say, right, leave the social sciences in grade 8 and 9, rather focus on the gateway subjects. And thank you for the compliment. They do work hard, but sir, they get paid well, so they can't complain. And then problem with underperforming schools. I have a theory that at some of our schools where we do have a problem, Member Walters, with leadership, there is complete and utter professional disengagement. And there was an article in the Daily Maverick, which I wish I'd written over the weekend, but she was far more courageous than me to write the article. But there's also a benevolent pathology. There's a benevolent pathology at those schools. We were at a school in Swellendam, 2 schools in Swellendam. One school in Swellendam took every Somali refugee. Every Somali refugee knocked on that door and got placed at that school. And this is a highly functioning school. The principal could have turned them away. I said no, because they can't pay school fees, and refugees are exempt from school fee payment. And there's another school, a local school, that serves brown and black children. And in the interviews, the staff said, these children's parents are seasonal fruit pickers. They will amount to nothing. That's a danger. That's a risk. That's benevolent pathology in its worst form. Now, if I had a magic wand, I'd close that school down and appoint new teachers, because Eliza Doolittle says Professor Higgins and My Fair Lady will always see me as a flower seller. At what point do we uplift our children and say you can be better, that your address will not determine the level of success that you'll achieve? So I do have a theory, and we've had a discussion around benevolent pathology. It's not pervasive at all, but there are elements of benevolent pathology, and that's what the department is fighting. So it's very difficult to apportion blame except to those principles that really are there. They're present, but that presenteeism, this benevolent pathology, these children will amount to nothing. They're poor, so we don't need to do anything with them. And we've seen it, and it mainly is in our disadvantaged communities where children need you to sell hope more often on a daily basis. So that's that there. And then Smybig, Mr. Mayor, has responded to you. And then Mondale, that model, Owen Bridgens, Member Christians, is out of this world, next level. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Just looking around committee, I think we covered. I think we certainly are covered. I think it has been a most absorbing, interesting and valuable session this. I think we've all learnt an enormous amount, and I think we are very appreciative of the work that the SEA is doing and has done in a short period of time in putting this together. And we can see this the quality coming out. And I think it's something that should have greater publicity, that everybody, that the broader public can understand what the work that is being done. And I think it's groundbreaking work that you are achieving here. So I think thank you very much for that. I don't know if there are any final comments that you possibly have, or Mr. Mayor has at this stage.
Just to the committee, a big thank you for the opportunity to present to you on a function that we as a department have been integrally part of over the past few years. And thank you for the opportunity to come and share what the SEA is doing with you as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much. When I got your email, it was like manna from heaven. I was excited about this, and my team said to me, "You're not nervous?" I said, "Not yet, but I'm not sure they're going to throw me because they're from all different political persuasions. We'll take it as it comes, but I recognize a lot of the names. And thank you for being on this portfolio committee. Every decision we make has to benefit the child, and I believe that's the work we do. We're not there to be popular, not at all. We're there to give the most credible report that can possibly contribute to school improvement. We are critical friends of the WCD, but we are not the department. And I hope and pray that the C will continue for many, many more years, and that we'll get to more schools, because I come from a background where I was brought up on the wrong side of Manchester. If it wasn't for a teacher, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's probably why I'm like a Rottweiler when it comes to quality. I couldn't go to the grammar school. I wasn't good enough. My parents were working class. I had to go to the comprehensive, and we lived in a tin house in the north of Manchester. So it was my teachers that lifted me out of poverty. Our schools have to do that more. And those that are not prepared to do that, we've got to hold them accountable. And when Mr. Mayor said we've got to start looking at how, and it's a terrible term to say, we've got to get rid of the rot, because what it does, it implies a glass half empty syndrome. Ladies and gentlemen, the glass is half full, let me tell you, in this province. Don't buy into the narrative that our schools are dysfunctional. It is not true. And if ever you want to feel uplifted, just knock on our doors on the 6th floor at the Waldorf, just up the road here, and we will treat you to a good cup of coffee, and we'll show you evidence that will leave you feeling quite inspired by the work our teachers and our principals are doing in most of our schools. And thank you for the opportunity, Chair. And to my team, I didn't allow you to speak, which is a good thing, because they give me a hard time and they talk a lot. But it's really nice to have you here. This really is the Brains Trust. They're always pushing the envelope, because we are building the sea as we go along. So thank you to my team as well. And Mr. Mayor, thanks so much. It's always nice to see you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think that it certainly has been great. I was quite worried that you didn't allow any of your team to talk, but we'll allow them to converse with the members. We will break now for some tea or coffee and some refreshments. It may not be as good quality coffee that we get across the road, but the committee will then come back thereafter and just deal with a couple of resolutions. But we'll in effect release you now. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I think if we can do that in about well, probably about 25 to somewhere there. Thank you.
Well, I didn't think you were allowed to choose. I think you were having talking. You guys were just having a place this year. Very small, spoken for hours. You think so? Yeah. No. That was really lovely. Thank you so much. It was
very good.
I just wanted to go with the ladies.
I think it's the many people have asked what's happening there. Spectre, the instructor,
Yeah.
I think press release we've actually sold. But it certainly does. I'm sure that it's also a kick in the backside, but also an inspiration for the schools to know that there's a rating that has effect placed in moving evaluated.
I'm hoping the annual report will be published.
Yeah,
it's ready for Minister McKeemus just to prove it.
that we can try and deal with the remainder of our agenda. What we need to deal with are a number of resolutions, and one, first of all, resolutions or recommendations flowing from the briefing that we've just had. There is an annual report, as I understand, that they will be bringing out shortly. And I think the one issue that we can perhaps just consider and obtain advice on is, I would think that possibly we should ask the SEA to come and present the annual report to this committee when that is ready in due course. Because I think it is usually valuable work that is being done. And I think what they've answered to me was, we had the inspectors in the days that when we were at school. I know some of you may well be younger when there were no inspectors, but a few of us will remember there used to be inspectors. And I think this is a very important role that they are undertaking here. And also probably giving that level of guidance and assistance then to the department in what has been done. So I'm not sure how committee feels on that, or if there are any other recommendations or comments. Member Christians?
Chair, just I think we should really visit those. I think that is it at the waterfront. Those
CTLI.
Yeah, we should really visit that to get a knowledge of that. But I would also want to request that we maybe visit, if there's time, Crestway, because being of a 30-somewhat school and being 60, so that we can see, you know, how that's done. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but also it will be nice to be at Mondale to see. We've been there before. But you see, you learn from these things. So they've invested in a deputy, and when the principal then retired, the deputy took over. So why can't they do that in other schools? Why should you understand what I'm saying? Why don't we now? You get a new person in, another year just to adapt, and the school and the children are suffering. That is my biggest worry. Why can't we have the seamless transition? When we know when a principal is retiring, chair, we know he's 60. He's going to. So I just want you to think about that, and maybe, I mean, my eyes went open with Pinelands. That was a visit that I'll never forget. But I mean, you know, there's still struggling schools, and I think as a committee, our job is to make sure that our children get quality education, but with that we do proper oversight. So I'm just throwing that out, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, I think that. I guess that will be unanimous. I think we'll all appreciate if we can do that and schedule that. I see that Member Walters is got his hand up. I hope that is an electronic hand and not a physical hand.
Chair, my apologies. I was actually under the impression this was a virtual meeting. I would have loved to have sat there in the meeting. This is really a good. This was really a good and useful presentation that dealt with facts and not jargon. I really enjoyed it. Chair, I would suggest that the committee, going forward, assess how fit for purpose modern principles are developing in our school system. I think with particular emphasis to the very disturbing point that was made, described as benevolent pathology. We actually need principals and teachers that put in more effort, not less effort, in people who need more effort. But anyway, I would suggest, and I think it aligns with what Member Christians also suggested, who keeps stealing my inputs because his hand is up first. But it aligns with his proposal. I think he spoke on the oversight side of it. I think we should, as a potential area of inquiry going forward, as the committee look at that, the leadership component at school level. I think it's crucial, and yeah, and I think the rest I was very happy with the answers I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Member Walters. I think perhaps if we just continue almost in the same vein, the one issue that wasn't really answered was on school governing bodies, on how one can see how one can equip them better and to train them. I believe there is some training that has been offered to SGBs, and certainly the new crop of SGBs who were recently elected. I'm not sure if it was earlier this year or whether it was the end of last year. But what I received a letter and a short presentation from a person who's offering financial services or the financial management of SGBs and the work that he has been doing. And what he's indicated as well is that there's a whole, it's almost a science, it's not really an art, of the financial management and what SGBs need to do often to keep their schools afloat and how to do that. And I think some of us may have noticed in the media some comments on certain schools who are starting to suffer financially, and I think as also mentioned by Member Stevens today. And maybe we must then just explore possibly a session where we can gain something better there, and you know how one involves the whole aspect of SGBs, the role of SGBs and how they are equipped to do that, that we can get a better understanding. And maybe that is from there's probably a body of SGBs that you know that deal with their interests as well. So those are probably just some thoughts that we have.
On SGBs, you know, I also don't know how they work it out. If we can just understand, SGB, you're the parent on the SGB because your child is there. But we can also see your child is matric now. So you're going to leave. You know, now we have a vacancy because we didn't pre-plan. So I don't know. Somehow we'll have to get explanation. How do you make sure the continuity stays on, that you don't have these hiccups? Now you want to appoint a principal, but you don't have sufficient members on the SGB because of that. So I don't know. Maybe we must just put that together, that we get that whole view on that to make sure that SGB don't go through that dip. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, certainly. I haven't got a ready resolution or recommendation, but I think it is something that we can develop over time as we gain a better understanding of it. Okay, I think so that deals with that aspect. Then we have, I see Member Walters.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to suggest possible wording, and vague enough at this stage that we can fill in the content at a later stage, but it's how we can institutionalize and capacitate good SGBs.
I think that, yeah, that's good, that. Okay, so I think can we then have the draft reports before us from the meetings of the 4th of March and the 25th of March, and those that will deal with the visits that we'd had to the Maitland High School and to the Vista High School. So that's the 4th of March. And then the second one is the report on our visit to Pinelands High. And I hope the members have had the opportunity to read through. And then maybe we can just take any comments then. I'm dealing with the Maitland one, Maitland and Vista, which runs from page 1, 2, and 3. So are there any comments that we would have on page 1 in terms of also noting delegation.
Chair, I wasn't there, but I see she's got it wrong in both. It's FC, not CF, both reports. Thank you.
That the presiding officer indicated to me that she'd put that in deliberately to see if we were paying attention. Page 2. And then we move on to Vista High towards the end of page 2, and then on to page 3. Any comments there? And if we are satisfied and happy with that, if we could get a proposer in a second.
I so propose, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Boyson.
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Member Stevens. So that if sorry, we then move to that was dealing with the 4th of March. Sorry, my microphone was off. We now move to the report of the 25th of March's visit to Pinelands High School, where that report also runs into 3 pages. I think if we can just check on the attendance, and I see, as Member Christians has mentioned there,
CF.
the correction of his
Member CF.
initials. Any comments on page 1? Then on page 2 and page 3. And if we...
I so propose, Chairperson, that we adopt.
Thank you, Member Boyson. Thank you, Member Christian, seconding. Sorry. We've also been working on developing a program for the next few weeks
That's been circulated to all the members with this document. It's the last thing I sent out to all the members.
Yeah, so the draft program has been sent out certainly for the next few weeks. We will also then have a closer look at populating June. I think we have a visit next week. And then we will be receiving we'll be looking at the draft strategic plan and the APP for the department, as well as the 4th quarter's financial results over the next few weeks. I think that with that, I think I can adjourn the meeting and we can go and enjoy the rest of Tuesday. Thank you very much.